Morning and welcome to day two. This is our third annual Virginia Farmers Market Food Safety Summit. This is specifically for Virginia farmers markets, and it is for farmers market managers and farmers market vendors. I am Kim Hutchinson. I'm the executive director of the Virginia Farmers Market Association. The goal of this summit is to give farmers market managers and vendors the information you need to know about food safety requirements in Virginia. To reiterate, this is not a best practice. What you are learning today are the laws, the requirements. If you are a market manager, if you are a vendor, this is what is required of you to be able to have these products sold in Virginia. So best practices, yes, I guess I shouldn't have said they're not a best practice, but they are the requirement. These are the laws. And this is the information that you need to know in order to make sure that everybody is being compliant with all of the requirements. We are extremely grateful to the Virginia Department of Health, the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, the Virginia Cooperative Extension, the Virginia Family Nutrition Program, the Virginia Alcohol Beverage and Control Authority, and the Virginia Department of Fire Programs for their partnership on this event. I would also like to thank our partners, the USDA, Farm Credit, Virginia State University, Virginia Fresh Match, Virginia's Farmers Market Lovers, the Virginia Farmers Market Association for their support of VAFMA and Virginia Farmers Markets. For you that don't know who the Virginia Farmers Market Association is, we're known as VAFMA, and we are a membership organization whose mission is to support farmers markets through education, networking, advocacy, and innovation that supports the growth and sustainability of farmers markets statewide. If you find our trainings and resources valuable, we encourage you to consider becoming a member or donating to VAFMA. A link will be in the email that's sent out to you to become a member if you are interested. We also will be sending out a survey in the link for feedback on this webinar, and we look forward to hearing from you. Today, we have very specific presentations. We are going to be hearing from CBD Hemp from the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, but we're going to be learning about pet food from the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. We also will be learning about the rules and regulations as they relate to dairy from the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. And we will be learning about meat and poultry from the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So today we will hear from 4 different departments within VDAX on these very specific issues. Yesterday, if you were not able to join us, we had the food safety, market food safety rules and regs from the Department of Health. We also had the overreaching food safety rules and regs from the Department of Agriculture, head of food safety, Rochelle Bland and Garen Bergen. We also heard on produce safety from Eric Bungo, and we learned all about the requirements for weights and measures from Gary Milton. So if you missed those, we have the video that we are currently working on, and we will have that uploaded to YouTube within the next 2 weeks. I appreciate everybody being here. Welcome to the Virginia Food Safety Summit, day 2. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Nikia Thomas with the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, who's going to talk to us about CBD hemp.
Thanks so much, Kim. So today we're going to talk about hemp, fun and exciting things. I'll try my best not to get too far into the weeds, pun intended. And I'm going to talk about the VDAX hemp enforcement program, but I'm also going to hint a little bit on our industrial hemp program. For myself, my name is Nikia Thomas. I'm the program manager for the Office of Hemp Enforcement. I've been working in hemp for the past 5 years, actually, and have been with VDAX for a little over a decade or so. And so I started off in food safety, and I started as a food safety inspector. And so I'm very familiar with the Virginia Farmers Market Association, the vendors and the market managers. And I really applaud you for your continuous hard work in making sure that Virginia small businesses have, an outlet and a way for them to continue to, produce sales in Virginia. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about hemp. At VDEX, there are 2 hemp programs. There's the Office of Hemp Enforcement, and then there's the Industrial Hemp Program. In the Office of Hemp Enforcement, this program oversees the regulation of hemp products that are intended for human consumption. So these things include candies, gummies, snacks, brownies, um, drink mixes. It's a wide range of products. We also are in charge of regulating hemp products that are meant for inhalation. So things that hemp extract that you may put in a vape pen and things of that nature. Now, the industrial hemp program is in charge of the growers and the processors and handlers. This program handles the plant material side of hemp. Okay. So if a grower wants to grow a few acres of hemp, or if they want to take the hemp plant material and they want to make it into a hemp extract, that program is in charge of overseeing that part of um, the hemp production. And so I'm going to talk more so on the hemp product side so that everyone can kind of get an idea of what our program does, but also what are the things to look for. So our program, we were created in 2023, and we were created out of kind of out of crisis. So there was an uptick in CBD and THC products, and the products, while some were safe, some were marketed and they were being sold unlabeled. They were being sold without proper information, and then we have children that were potentially getting into these products and being made sick, and even some unsuspecting adults were made sick. And so lawmakers decided that we needed to take action on the growing industry. And so the Office of Hemp Enforcement was formed. So we exist to ensure that edible hemp products that are made and distributed and offered for sale in Virginia, um, and that this is done, that make sure that they're safe and that they're in compliance with all of the regulations and the Virginia food and drink law. We do this by conducting inspections at retail establishments that offer for sale edible hemp products. And so I'll get a little bit more into what that looks like. Our program is made up of about 16 staff members. We have 8 inspectors throughout the state. They are located spread out kind of throughout the state, and they each have a territory of area that they are in charge of inspecting. We have one inspection supervisor who is also doing inspections but works in an office as well. And then we have some office staff here in the office that help to support the program. Our compliance team is made up of 3 compliance officers and 1 compliance and technical specialist supervisor. I'll get more into the details of what they actually do. So before I do that, let's talk a little bit about the law that we actually enforce, the Virginia Food and Drink Law. So this law was updated in 2023, and it includes some requirements for edible hemp products. And I'll talk a little bit about what an edible hemp product is so that we can all kind of know exactly what we're talking about. But the Virginia Food and Drink Law was updated. And so on this slide, you'll see just a few requirements of what was included in the law, including total THC, meaning if a product that has THC in it, every isomer of or cannabinoid that is added up together, meaning the total THC in the product must be 0.3% or less. Okay, so that's a requirement for any edible hemp product or product intended for inhalation. Any person that is planning to sell or produce these products that contain industrial hemp extract, or if they include industrial hemp in a food product, they must submit an edible hemp products disclosure form. This form is intended so that our program can know exactly who is selling, what they're selling, and to give them awareness of what the requirements are if they do intend to sell. In addition to that, as you all know, VDAC's food safety program, they're in charge of inspecting food products. And so we partner with the food safety program to ensure that any person who wants to sell an edible hemp product at a retail establishment, that requirement for a food safety permit is still required. Okay, so if you're a retail establishment or if you want to manufacture foods that include hemp in it, that is still a requirement for you. You still have to submit an application and obtain a VDAX food safety permit. The only exception is if you are exempt from food safety permit, which means that you are a retail food establishment who doesn't have any things like dairy or eggs or infant formula that will require a certain level of inspection from the food safety program. And then the last thing that's significant on this slide is the civil penalties. So remember how I mentioned before that we conduct edible hemp product inspections. So those inspections do carry significant violations to the Virginia Food and Drink Law. Those civil penalties can be up to 10,000 per violation. Now, of course, we certainly don't want to put anyone out of business. And so what we do is these civil penalties are significantly reduced to ensure that we are trying to obtain compliance. The law we are enforcing, as I stated before, was updated in July of 2023. It limits the amount of THC in food products to 2 milligrams of THC per package, or if there is CBD in the product, there's a 25 milligram of CBD to 1 milligram of THC ratio. We also require that products that contain THC must be presented in a child-resistant package. This is done to ensure that there is a reduced risk of poison to children who may be exposed to these products. And then edible hemp products must also bear a label with specific information that's accompanied by a certificate of analysis. Now, these products do not come with a lab report, but often what they do come with is a QR code, or they come with a web address of where the consumer can find the laboratory results or the laboratory analysis of how much THC is in the product, how much CBD is in the product, and if there are any other cannabinoids or isomers that are in the product. And so this allows the consumer to make an knowledgeable purchase about the products that they're consuming. So let's get into a new requirement that was enacted November of last year. So any person who wants to offer for sale an edible hemp product or a product that contains hemp intended for inhalation, they are required to have a hemp product retail facility registration. This registration is issued per location. And I will include in our next slide an example of what that registration looks like. Each registration is issued per location, and the registration must also be issued per location of a temporary event. So if an individual wants to sell at a farmer's market, they can do so. They would need to submit an application and an application fee and obtain a registration for the location of the farmer's market. The registration is not transferable from location to location. Each registration does require a separate application and application fee. This is an electronic example of what a retail registration looks like. And so you'll see at the top here, it says regulated hemp product retail facility registration. It has an issue date and an expiration date, which means each registration that is issued is valid for 1 year from the date that it is issued. So for instance, if I were to issue a registration today, April 29th, that means the registration would expire April 29th of 2026. Now, this registration ensures that the retailer knows you are registered to sell and offer for sale edible hemp products and products that contain hemp intended for smoking. However, it's important that the registrant is aware that they are still required to comply with Virginia laws regarding regulated hemp products. And so, for our farmers market managers out there, if you have a vendor who is interested in selling edible hemp products or products that contain hemp, you're going to need to ask for a copy of this. Um, in my next slide here is a copy of what a printed and official copy registration looks like. So the registrant who applies will get a electronic copy first, and then they will be mailed an official copy of their registration, and that's what this is. So for my farmers market managers out there, and for my vendors who are interested in selling hemp products at farmers markets, be sure to visit our website to obtain your application and apply to sell your products at the farmers market. And then my farmers market managers make sure that if you have a vendor who wants to sell these products, they present this registration to you. Okay, so let's talk about what our inspections look like. When we go out to do inspections, those inspections often occur at retail establishments. Those retail establishments include places like CBD shops, vape stores, gas stations, and even some grocery stores. So what we do is we conduct on-site inspections of businesses that carry edible hemp products. These may be inspections done on a routine basis or as a part of a complaint investigation. We gather business information, and then what we do is we take photographs of all of the edible hemp products that are that are for sale in the business. We provide information that outlines the requirements to sell edible hemp products in Virginia, and then contact information. But we also review the facility conditions to ensure that the products are being sold in a safe and sanitary environment. We then compile all of that information and we send it over to our compliance team. And our compliance team reviews each product that is offered for sale in the business. And we're reviewing the label to ensure that everything that is required in law for an edible hemp product is stated on the label and that it is in compliance with the Virginia Food and Drink Law and regulations. And so I have in this presentation just an idea of what that would look like, what those labels would look like. Previously, I stated that we have inspectors that are located throughout the state. This map depicts the approximate locations for our field staff positions. We have 2 inspectors in the Northern Virginia area, an inspector in the western area of our state, central west, and then far southwest in width. We have an inspector in Virginia Beach, Williamsburg, and then a central inspector here in Richmond, Virginia. So the purpose of our edible hemp products inspections, as I stated before, is to enforce the Virginia Food and Drink Law and uphold product safety to ensure that Virginia consumers are making a safe choice and that they're consuming products that are safe for them. And also we evaluate hemp products, not just at retailers. We also do inspections at distributors, warehouses, wholesalers, and manufacturers to ensure that they are also in compliance with the law. And so we cover not only retailers, but distributors, warehouses, wholesalers, and manufacturers of these products. Our aim is compliance, and we do education on the laws secondary to our enforcement to ensure that retailers, distributors, and manufacturers are aware of the requirements of the law. So let's talk about what a hemp product actually is. A hemp product means any product, including a food product, that has industrial hemp in it. And so this means that industrial hemp is hemp that has completed all stages of processing needed for the product. And so if you see a gummy or candy or brownie or snack food items, those products that, and they may say like things like Delta 8, Delta 10, Delta 9, CBD, all of those products have hemp included in them. And hemp is may go through several stages of processing in order for it to be added to the food product. So from the plant material, typically a person will take the hemp plant material and they will extract all of the CBD and THC from that hemp plant material, make it into an extract, and then that is added to the food product. And so when offered for sale, we know that the product cannot contain anything more than 0.3% THC. THC is an ingredient that has psychoactive abilities. And so in Virginia, it's important that we know hemp products that contain more than 0.3% THC can be considered marijuana. Okay. And I'll talk a little bit about that later in our presentation. And then in addition to that, any hemp product, edible hemp product that is sold in Virginia cannot contain contains either no more than 2 milligrams of total THC per package or an amount of CBD that is no less than 25 times greater than the amount of total THC per package. So that's that 25-to-1 ratio that I was talking through earlier. That's what that means. So an edible hemp product means any hemp product that is or includes an industrial hemp extract that is intended to be consumed orally. Regulated hemp product means a hemp product intended for smoking or an edible hemp product. So you'll see these terms interchange quite often, edible hemp product or regulated hemp product. Those two, regulated hemp product means an edible hemp product or a hemp product intended for smoking or inhalation. Some of the examples include gummies, cookies, candies, tinctures, oils, even dietary supplements. Some of the requirements that I want to talk through today, these two are really important to highlight. For my farmers market managers, it's really important that if you do have a vendor who's offering hemp products for sale, that they are meeting at least these two practices, these two requirements. The first being child resistant, meaning the packaging needs to be significantly difficult for a typical child under the ages of 5 to open. And so what we want to ensure is that the packaging is not something that a typical toddler may be able to open unassisted. The second being trademark. We want to ensure that products that are offered for sale do not contain any trademark or bear a label of a famous or well-known product. These things can include things like Skittles and Sour Patch Kids and Oreos, things of that nature. And here are some examples of what that looks like. These products are considered not compliant in Virginia. You have Nerd Rope Bites. This contains 500 milligrams of THC. You have Zittles and Cannaburst gummies and Stoner Patch Kids, medicated Nerd Rope, chocolate Stonios. And so all of these products are dangerous and can be and are considered not compliant in Virginia, which means that they can be considered in violation of the Virginia Food and Drink Law. We certainly don't want any of these products getting into the hands of children. And so these products, are marketed in a way that can be attractive to young children. So we want to ensure that these products are not being sold in Virginia. Next, we're going to talk through a little bit more about our compliance team. So let's say our compliance team gets an inspection that has a bunch of the products that were on the previous slide. We review those products to ensure that they're in compliance with the Virginia Food and Drink Law and regulations. So that compliance for those previous products, and let me just quickly go back. The compliance and the violations for these products would be quite high. And remember those civil penalties I mentioned earlier. A retailer who may be selling these products would be receiving quite a high civil penalty for products like this. Okay. So our compliance officers, they review the inspection reports and they act as technical experts in our field. What that means is if we encounter a product that we have not encountered before, and we're trying to assess whether or not it's even classified as an edible hemp product, or if we're trying to assess how this may or may not comply with Virginia law and regulations. Our compliance team is in charge of making sure that we research and that we ensure that any decisions we make in regards to civil penalties are justified. So they handle all of our compliance activities, including finalizing product reviews, sending notices of alleged violation, penalty assessments, so on and so forth. Another requirement for our compliance officers to look at is approved sources. So let's say I'm a manufacturer who is in North Carolina and I want to sell my products at the farmers market in Virginia. Now, a part of being an approved source is making sure that any of the products that are made or sold in Virginia, that they come from a location and manufactured in a location that has the proper regulatory agency in place to inspect those products. So, for instance, a state like North Carolina that doesn't have any regulatory agency or oversight for the manufacturing and sale of hemp products would not be considered an approved source. So that's a part of what we look at when we're looking at edible hemp products. We want to ensure that they're coming from an inspected source and that it's coming from a place that has laws and regulations and criteria that pertain to the manufacturing of industrial hemp extracts or food containing industrial hemp. Some of the labeling requirements would include making sure that the product is equipped with a label that has all of the information a consumer would need to make a knowledgeable purchase. So that includes all of the ingredients in the product. It would include any amount of substance that constitutes a single serving. So ensuring that if a product is sold with more than one serving, that all of that information is included on the label. We want to ensure that the next two bullets are definitely on there. So if it's a product that has THC in it, we want to ensure that the consumer knows how much THC is in it. If it has CBD, we want to ensure that the customer knows how much CBD is in it. These products can have a psychoactive effect and an effect on the body. And so we want to ensure that the consumer knows exactly what it is that they're ingesting. Selling or offering for sale a substance that is intended for human consumption that contains a synthetic derivative of THC is a prohibited act. I won't get too much into what synthetic derivatives are, but basically, they are synthetic THC, which means these this THC potentially was made in a lab, in a laboratory, and can be highly toxic to an individual. Here's an example of what a compliant label would look like. So we have all of the pertinent information. We know how much CBD is in it. We know how much THC is in it. We see a serving size down here at the bottom. Okay. We see the manufacturer's information, all of the ingredients that are there, including any sub ingredients, and we want to ensure that allergens are there as well. We also have the THC per serving, total THC in the product, and this batch code is important so that if I want to go to the manufacturer's website and see how much THC or what the test results of this product is, I can enter in this batch number and I can find that information. Here's an example of what non-compliant labels would look like. If a vendor is selling products like these that don't contain any labeling or any information, this is a huge red flag. We do not want to see these products, okay? How many toddlers and children do you know will go into mommy's purse or daddy's bag and then they will find these products and they will just eat them because they look like candy? And so we want to ensure that none of these products are sold without proper labeling. Okay. This down here in the bottom right corner, I think these are honey sticks that include THC in them, and they're sold by the bunch. But you wouldn't know exactly what this is or how much THC is in it, and this could potentially be harmful to a person who ingests it. These caramel candies, I mean, who doesn't like a caramel candy or Werther's? But these products can be highly intoxicating to an individual who's ingesting this without knowing exactly what's in it. All right, so that actually wraps up the hemp and product side of VDAX. This slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about industrial hemp because I know that there may be interest in selling the hemp plant at farmers markets. So, if a person is, if a vendor wants to sell industrial hemp or the hemp plant at a farmer's market, they can only sell it to an individual who is registered to, who is a industrial hemp grower, processor, or handler. So that means an individual selling industrial hemp, the plant material they need to have an industrial hemp grower, processor, or handler registration, and the person they're selling it to also needs to have an industrial hemp grower, processor, or handler registration. Growers in Virginia may not place any industrial hemp into commerce until it receives a Fit for Commerce certificate. So this means that if I am a grower who has an industrial hemp grower registration, I need to ensure that I have a Fit for Commerce certificate for any product or any hemp that I intend to sell. And if I am making a sale, that sale has to be to another industrial hemp grower, processor, or handler. Industrial hemp cannot be sold to a person without a registration. Why? Because in Virginia, in order for the hemp to be considered hemp, the person who is selling it and has it in their possession has to have an industrial hemp grower, processor, or handler registration. If a person is selling hemp plants and they don't have a registration, that could be considered and would be considered a marijuana sale in Virginia, which we all know is not legal in Virginia currently. So it's important that for my farmers market vendors, if you have any persons that want to sell the hemp plant material, they show you a industrial hemp registration for that, and potentially a Fit for Commerce certificate, but also make sure that they are aware that they cannot sell hemp plant material to just a regular customer. That customer or that individual has to have an industrial hemp registration as well. And then lastly, any individual that has an industrial hemp processor registration. A processor is someone who takes the hemp plant material and they want to make it into a hemp product. And so, if this person does have a hemp processor registration, they want to sell a hemp product at the farmer's market, they potentially may need a food safety permit as well as a hemp product retail facility registration. And I think that's the end of my presentation. There is some contact information there for you. I've included just our general contact, my email address, the inspection supervisor, Emily Contepasses, as well as Manuel Vasquez, who is our compliance supervisor.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation, as always. It was really clear. It's such a complicated subject, and I appreciate you sharing all of the information as well as the update. We do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and ask them. If a hemp producer is from North Carolina and has all their paperwork from North Carolina, do they also need to be registered in Virginia?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and to my knowledge, in North Carolina, they do not have a regulatory agency that is inspecting hemp products. And so, because of that, if a vendor from North Carolina wants to sell hemp products in Virginia, it would not be considered an approved source, which means it would not be compliant with Virginia law.
Okay.
So I would recommend not allowing the sale of products that are manufactured in North Carolina.
Okay. So it does need to be registered in Virginia then.
Well, to register in Virginia, you have to be located in Virginia. And so if a vendor is in North Carolina and they don't have a facility in Virginia, then we wouldn't register them.
Okay. So then to summarize, if you have a producer that is growing their product outside of Virginia, then you cannot accept that product in Virginia because it cannot be registered to be sold.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So I would say if you have a person who wants to sell and they're not located in the state, it would probably be good to talk with our office and just see if they are an approved source, meaning that they are making products in a location or in a state that has a regulatory agency that inspects those products. So if
Okay.
you do find someone who is, offering products and they're not from Virginia, maybe just contact our office and we can give you some more information on that.
Okay. Perfect. But to answer the question about North Carolina, it sounds like that's a no. Okay. Sorry about that. I know her market is down on the border, so I understand why she's asking the question. In years past, Pam Miles has sent us a list of regulatory agencies, approved agencies, um, that can be utilized for producing the product. Can you send us the updated list, the lab list?
Sure. Yeah, we do have a list of individuals that have registered and received that hemp product retail registration. So yes, I can share that with you.
Okay, that would be great. We'll go ahead and post that, just to make sure that there's no changes from previous years. That would be great.
Okay.
I have a question. How long does it take to obtain a registration? And then the second, well, go ahead. Yeah. How long does it take to obtain a registration?
You know, we're doing really, really good right now. And so I would say no more than 2 weeks. If we receive the application, the turnaround should be no more than 2 weeks, and it may be even less than that.
That is really good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know this is a priority and has been. So thank you for that. And can edible hemp products be made under cottage law?
Short answer, no. There are products that you can make in your home, but you would not necessarily be exempt from inspection. And
Yeah.
so if a individual wants to make hemp products in their home, they certainly can do that, but they do have to go through the inspection and the food safety permit and all of that. So
Mhm.
yes.
Elaine, I see that you're on the call. Would you drop that answer in the, since they fall under you for food safety? So if you are making an edible hemp product, you also have to have it as well as going through, your department, Nikia. You also
Yes.
have to go through food safety.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then we have a couple of more questions if you are, able. What if it's a restaurant? Gosh, well, so this was from the middle of your presentation when you were talking about farmers market. So I guess they want to know about a restaurant doing edible products.
Yeah, so a restaurant can do edible hemp products. They would still need to register with our office. So they would still need to apply for that hemp product retail facility registration. They would need to submit the product that they intend to offer for sale for review, especially if they're manufacturing it. And we would need to review that to ensure that the product meets the requirements of Virginia law, but they do need to obtain a registration with us.
Okay. And you've talked about edible products because that's what we see at farmers markets. The other two products we see are pet foods, which I believe will be covered, separately today. But we also see body products, lotions, oils, bath bombs, things of that sort. Can you talk a little bit about, that hemp infused oils, CBD infused oils, et cetera, and what the process is regulatory for that?
Yes, absolutely. So for cosmetics and topicals, those products do have requirements in Virginia law. But the main requirement that we want to see on the packaging is a disclaimer that says not for human consumption. So those products do need to have a label that says this is not for human consumption on it, and of course all of the other information that would be needed, such as contact information for the manufacturer, what the product is, a descriptive term, and statement of identity, things of that nature. But the main thing we want to make sure that is on the label is a disclaimer that says not for human consumption.
Do they go through your office for those products? Do they go through the FDA? What is the process? I know like the grocery stores pulled all their products off the shelves last year, et cetera. What is the regulatory process for somebody that's doing cosmetic type processes here in Virginia?
Yeah. So they certainly can go to the FDA if they have a product that they want to manufacture. In our office, we focus more on edible hemp products that are for human consumption. And so if a person wants to make a body oil or a body butter with hemp in it, they are more than welcome to do so. And they do not need to submit an application for registration. So that would not be a requirement for cosmetics and topicals.
Is the 0.3% total mass of the product or percent of the cannabinoids?
So the 0.3% is how much THC is in the entire product. Okay, so it's not per cannabinoid, it's for the entire product.
Okay.
Mhm.
Must a hemp buyer present a certificate or have a card to present for purchase at the market? If so, do they present it to the market manager or vendor?
No, so if a consumer wants to purchase a hemp product, they don't need any certification or card to do that
Because it's below the
because it's
0.3%, which is considered
correct.
marijuana, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Does
Yeah.
the
So I
vendor
think
have to
if we were talking about marijuana, that'd be something different, especially for medicinal marijuana. I do believe that those consumers do need to show some level of identification, but that's not the case for hemp products.
And just to clarify, as of right now, you cannot sell any products at a farmer's market that are over 0.3%.
That's correct.
And you cannot sell hemp plants or hemp flowers at a farmer's
That's
market.
yeah. So I would recommend not selling them at farmers markets for sure.
That's been the rule in the past is that they're not,
Yes. Yeah.
that it's not legal to sell those.
Yeah.
Okay. And okay, just to clarify, this is the question. Just to clarify, I can purchase gummies that meet the 0.3% freeze dry it in my VDAX inspected kitchen and sell it at a market as long as I meet childproof and retail registration approval.
I hope I understand. So the person
Okay.
wants to buy THC gummies, freeze dry them, and then sell them at the farmer's market.
Yeah.
If a person wants to do that, they would need the hemp product retail registration, and then they would need to submit an application for through the food safety program. If they're making it in a VDAX inspected kitchen, so that means they already have a permit, they would still need to submit that product for review. Food safety would send it to us for review, and then we would contact the manufacturer to give any recommendations or changes or revisions to that product label.
Okay. Are there regulations on candles with CBD?
No, no, we don't have any requirements for candles that include CBD.
Okay. And does a vendor need to have a permit to sell body lotions with CBD hemp? I think you mentioned this earlier, but does it?
No, we don't require it for topicals and cosmetics.
Okay. That's where they go to the FDA to have
Mhm.
it looked at. Yeah. Okay. I think I captured all the questions here. And again, because I get asked this probably no less than 100 times during market season, hemp plants and hemp flowers are not eligible to be sold at a farmer's market.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Um, Always a ever-changing uh, topic. And so I certainly appreciate all of the great information that you provided for us. If another question comes to mind, drop it in the chat and we will get that answer for you. Thank you so much. Okay, I really appreciate it. I can't even keep all of the CBD hemp information straight. It's gotten so much more complicated. Um, And we will talk about next. We actually have Carolyn Wilkinson with the Virginia Department of Agriculture Consumer Services, who's going to talk about pet foods, and she will also address CBD, hemp, and pet foods too. Correct? Is that part of your presentation?
Yes, I will mention that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Caroline Wilkinson. I'm with the Virginia Department of Agriculture, and I'm in the agricultural commodity program. And we regulate animal feed, seed, fertilizer, and lime. Wayne Pendleton and Jennifer Clifford are also on the call with us, and they are my colleagues in the same department, and will be helping answer questions in the Q&A as I go along, because it's kind of hard to keep track of them. And I know sometimes when you ask a question, it's on a specific slide, and it's hard to go back and remember what exactly we were discussing at that time. And then I'll be happy to answer questions at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Requirements to sell pet treats in Virginia. So we have a few things to go over. We'll talk about fees, the registration forms, tonnage, manufacturing, and labeling. So first up are fees. So to sell pet treats in the Commonwealth, you have to have a commercial feed license. And this feed licensing year is January 1st to December 31st, and the license is $50 per year. Then if you have product registration, so if you're selling like Caroline's cat treats and it's individually packaged, that's considered a product registration. And then that registration year is the same from January 1st to December 31st. A small package product registration is $50 per product per year. And then in the next slide, you'll see, on the next two slides, you'll see the registration form, because there may be some alternative product pricing. So here is the license registration form. There is a downloadable version, and we can send that out to Kim, and she can send that out questions, or we can drop it in the Q&A if anyone wants to ask that question. But on here, the license application just talks about what you have to fill out, what information we need, you know, the applicant, your name, if you're the guarantor, if you're the manufacturer, could be the same. And then in here, you also have like types of feeds. So there's medicated feed, bulk. Small package is mostly what I think you're at the farmers market we're going to see, and people are going to try to sell there at those locations. But just wanted you to see that there are other options as well. And then here is the product registration form. So this is where you are going to list the products that you sell. So in here, you know, if I was selling Caroline's Cat Crunchies, that would be my brand product name. I'd put it here. And then there are different codes that come from this first form that you're going to also put over an intended species. So obviously cat for me, the package sizes, maybe 8 ounces, whatever your decisions are for that. As you can see, that both pages must be completed and sent with full copies of labels for review. And the labels sent have to be eligible and correspond to the name found on the product list. So sometimes companies will have what they have on the label, but maybe they have a different name in their own system. We just need to make sure that matches the label and then what is on this product list to reduce any confusion out if the inspectors are out in the field in the marketplace checking product. The next section will be talking about tonnage. So what is it? Feed, nutritional supplements, treats, anything sold that is animal feed, bulk, loose, or in packages greater than 10 pounds. For example, the cookie bar, customers choose product and pay by the pound. When is it due? So tonnage reports are due February 1st. We send out the tonnage reports annually in December. Do I have to file if I mark exempt? So over here on this section right here, sorry, let me find the mouse. You see different sections. So if you were only selling small package, then you would check this. You would print, sign, date, and send the form back. No money is needed. You don't need to report anything else. If you sell both registered small package products less than 10 pounds, and you do sell products over 10 pounds or bulk product or a loose product, then you do not mark exempt. You would have to record the tonnage over on this section, and the minimum fee is $35. Then you sign date, include fee, and return to the address listed. All right, so we're going to get into manufacturing side, which is I know the most questions are going to be about. Pet treats can be manufactured in a home kitchen. An inspection prior to manufacturing is not required, but we are allowed by our statute to conduct an inspection if needed, or if we have the ability, if we have a complaint or something in that regards. As for manufacturing, we just ask everyone to follow the FDA's good manufacturing practices. You can search that by just doing an online search of 21 CFR Part 507 CGMP. And it just talks about how to ensure that the package and the product is safe. So although this is for animals, not for human consumption, we still want that product to be safe to reduce any potential contamination or anything like that. So there's no, hopefully, so there's no issues with animals consuming it. Labeling. So for all products, small package feed products, we review labels prior to registration. So as I mentioned earlier, you would send in your license registration form, and then you would send in your product registration form. And with those completed forms comes your completed labels. And our office will review those labels. And then if all labels are in compliance, all fees were paid, everything else is straight, then you will get your license and registration list in the mail. As you can see here, I just copied over from the law, just talks about the small package commercial feed, about how you're required to pay the registration fee, when it's due, etc. So label requirements. So in Virginia, we have several labeling requirements for small package feed and any actual animal feed that's being sold. First off is your brand name, whatever name that you want to call it. I was obviously using prior to Caroline's Cat Crunchies, or Millie's Cat Crunchies, or Sweet Potato Biscuits, whatever you want that product to be called. And the next up is the kind of pet. So we do have to label the treat with the species. So dog, cat, horse, rabbit, I'm not sure, whatever species that you are intending the treat to be for, if it's not in the brand. So if you said Cat Crunchies, then you wouldn't have to put the kind of pet on the label. If you just said Crunchies, then you would need to write it's for a cat or for a dog or for whatever species that you're intending the treat for. Quantity statement. I know yesterday Weights and Measures was on, but just to go back over it, we do require weight or volume on the product. So it can be either net weight, so 8 ounces, or in grams, or net volume of like 12 fluid ounces, 355 milliliters. Both measurements must be present on the label. Gary Milton from Weights and Measures went over yesterday that we Virginia no longer allows products to be sold by like 3 pig ears for $3 or something like that. So just as a reminder, we do have to have that quantity statement on the label. Ingredient statement. We get a lot of questions about this. So a continuous list of each approved ingredient using the name of the ingredient adopted by AFCO. Ingredients shall be listed in descending order of predominance by weight. So if I'm making a product and the largest amount that goes in it is peanut butter, then I would say peanut butter, next is flour, butter, cinnamon. These are just examples, but that would be in descending order of predominance by weight. If there is no designated name adopted by AFCO, you might need to use the common name of the product, such as sugar, butter, flour, egg, etc. So over here, you'll see that I have some examples of ingredients. I've already mentioned the first one, but just the second one would be, maybe I'm doing a sweet potato treat, and that's my first main ingredient. And then I have additional flour and egg and sugar. Or a blueberry treat that has blueberries and sweet potatoes, and they're the largest amounts going in. Then we have next is flour, and then last is egg. Just because I know it's already come up, just want to mention that CBD, hemp, and THC are not allowed in feed products with the nutritional guaranteed analysis. And this is what we're talking about when we talk about the guaranteed analysis. It must include the correct heading, so guaranteed analysis, and the following components stated in order in the format listed below. So your guaranteed analysis is going to list your crude protein, your crude fat, your crude fiber, and your moisture. And as you can see, there are minimums and maximums depending on the product. If you are doing a low or reduced fat treat, you also have to list crude fat max. Additional or voluntary guarantees must be listed thereafter in the appropriate format with the appropriate units. So if you do have other things that you wish to guarantee, that's fine. You just need to list them below. And this here is on the side is just an example of the guaranteed analysis. It's the minimal amount that we would have to have on there. So I just, was trying to make up just an example here. We have crude protein, minimum of 10%, crude fat, minimum of 2%, crude fiber, maximum of 5%, and then moisture, maximum of 12%. Calorie content. So on the label, we also have to have the list of a calorie content on the snacks, treats, and supplements. And this is separate from the guaranteed analysis, and it appears under its own heading of calorie content. And the statement shall be measured in terms of metabolizable energy on an as-fed basis. So you have to write in kilocalories per kilogram of the treat for the treat, and then kilocalories per familiar household. What I would say, like if I was doing a treat, it'd be called a treat, pieces, etc. We have to do both values have to be on that label. So here is an example of just a basic example of a label with the minimum requirements on there. So I have my name, sweet potato treat. I have the ingredients, sweet potato, flour, butter, sugar. I have my guaranteed analysis with the crude protein, fat, fiber, and moisture. The calorie content I have over on the side, as you can see, to be fed as a snack or treat for small dogs. So I didn't write dog treat in the brand name, so I wrote it down on the side. And then your company name, your location, contact. I know a lot of people like to use email, and then your net weight. A label requirements, additional label requirements be nutritional adequacy statement. The product is clearly identified on the front as a snack or treat. Its purpose statement is not required. As you saw before, I did mention that on my example, and I'll have another one later. And the manufacturer guarantor, as I mentioned earlier, you need to have your name, mailing address is a minimum. You can put an email address if you'd like. We do not require the phone number to be on, but just does have to have the company name, city, state, zip is minimum. So claims on your treats or on the label must be truthful, and they are subject to substantiation requests. So this also includes claims on websites. So if you do have a website and you have a claim on the website and it may not be on the actual label, we do check out websites as well, and they must be truthful and are also subject to substantiation. So example of some claims might be whitens teeth, freshens breath, etc., etc. So dental claim would be needs to include the mechanism for the plaque and tartar removal. So chewing helps scrape away plaque and tartar. Unless it can be substantiated, it's not going to be allowed. Low-calorie dog treats indicate feeding directions on how to feed to meet your claim. Hairball control, not allowed on cat treats, only on complete feeds. And then any claims that are intended for the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease in animals, other than food or cosmetics, are considered drug claims, and they are not allowed on pet feed or pet treats. So here's another example, just very basic, as you can see, but it just covers all the things that are required. This is Lucy's Delicious Biscuits. These are dog treats. I have my ingredients in there, my guaranteed analysis, my calorie content. I also mentioned that it needs to be fed as a snack or treat for small dogs. I have my name of my company and my city and state. I did forget the zip, so I apologize for that. And then an email address, just in case they had questions or wanted to order more or wanted to find out, where maybe I sell at another location, for them to contact. And then my net weight. So these are some questions, some just common questions that we get, and we just wanted to put this in. Maybe it can help answer questions that you have. Do I need a business license in addition to the commercial feed license? That honestly is just dependent upon your city or your county. You would need to reach out to them. The commercial feed license is a requirement to sell in Virginia, but a city and county may have their own regulations as well. Do cottage laws apply to animal food? No, animal food does not fall under the cottage laws. And this includes pet food, pet treats, supplemental feeding. You would have to license and register your programs here with us, as we've already mentioned. Cottage laws are for the human food side. What is the chew exemption? So VDAX follows the guidelines set up by AFCO, which is the Association of American Feed Control Officials, on chews, and then they are exempt from registration. These products do not, so you cannot have a calorie content, guaranteed analysis, nothing on the label that shows any nutritional claims. Examples are chews, bones, toys, exercisers made of animal skin, hide, wood, or man-made materials like hooves, ears. There's also animal bones, ligaments, snouts, pizzles that may fall in that chew exemption. If you need more information, you can go to the AFCO website. You can just search AFCO treats and chews. It should come up and it can give you additional information on that exemption. Are dehydrated or freeze-dried chicken feet allowed without a commercial kitchen? Yes, as I mentioned before, you can manufacture pet treats at home. It does not have to be a commercial kitchen. It can be in home. Does pet food have to be at a certain temperature, and what are the guidelines? So the product it's really just dependent upon the product. If you have a pop cup or something frozen, we do require it to be kept at temperature just to prevent adulteration. How do you go about starting an on-site dog food company? Once again, just reach out to us here at VDAX. You can find us on the website to contact the Agricultural Commodities Program. I know Kim's got our contact information. I think it's been shared because I've already gotten some emails about questions about selling pet food. And we were happy to provide you that information that you need to start up your own pet food business. Where do you find insurance for starting a dog food company at a farmer's market? I've received this question pretty often, so that's something you would just want to reach out to your insurance agent for help on. Can you sell pet food and snacks at more than one farmer's market and wholesale without a commercial kitchen? Yep, can sell animal food, which includes pet food and pet snacks, pet treats without a commercial kitchen, still required to license, and if applicable, register your product. And then there was a question last year about ground poultry as a pet food. And yes, you can sell ground meat as a supplemental food, but just remember it has to be manufactured and kept under conditions to prevent adulteration. And that is the last slide for me. Thank you all for coming.
Carolyn, thank you so much. While you're stop sharing, I'm going to ask you to readdress a couple of questions that we get asked a lot.
Yes.
Just to make sure that we're clear on the answer. Raw milk and pet food.
So you would need to license and register the product with us. It has a specific jargon that is required on the label. Not for human consumption, but there's a specific wording that we would help provide you with. But it is allowed as a pet food if you license and register with our program.
And that is the only way that raw milk can be sold at a farmer's market is as a pet food, not for human consumption, correct?
Correct.
And the second is, and I see there's some chatter in the question, the Q&A also, but to go back to what Gary Milton said yesterday, whether it's pig's ears or chicken feed or whatever, though they don't have to be registered, they do have to be packaged and labeled, correct?
So he was talking about the weight option about that. So we used to allow it to be sold like 3 for $1, 3 for $2 or something like that. And I think in 2019, I believe, is when it was changed and they began enforcing it in 2022. But we do ask for things to have a label if it's possible. But if it meets that chew exemption, then Jennifer, you and Wayne can correct me, then it's not going to need to license and register with us. So I think someone has some questions about the chew exemption on there.
Yeah, and I know that we had this come up last year, and we had this come up already this year, specifically around chicken feet is why we went down the rabbit
Yeah,
hole. Them being in a basket and, they're 75 cents a piece kind of thing. And he said,
yeah.
no, regarding, again, doesn't have to be registered, et cetera,
It has
through,
to have that weight, so it has
but
to be,
it
I
does
guess,
have
some
to
type of
be,
packaging.
it does have to be packaged and have a label on it with the weight and
And
sold.
that's their
Right.
requirement, not necessarily our requirement, if
Yes.
that
And
makes
so, and I
sense.
just wanted to clarify because I love the answer that was put in the chat, but that's your rules under your department. But they do need to be packaged and they do need to have a label on them, et cetera. So that's why we do this food safety summit, is because there's so many different departments. And though you may not fall under, even though you're making something that's considered pet food, and you don't have the specific requirement with pet food, you may have the requirement with food safety or weights and measures, et cetera. So it's confusing, but I just wanted to bring that back up and clarify that even though you do not have to register it with pet food, if you're doing pig's ears, you're doing chicken feet, anything of that sort as a treat, or chew, etc., it does need to be, it can't be in a basket to pick up and buy for 75 cents unless it's in a package with a label.
Yes, and that is something for them. That's not necessarily, like you said, that's the hardest thing with it, as I'm sure all people, all those who are selling at farmer market know, like something, maybe you have a human food and you want to do pet food, they don't actually fall under that same thing. You've got to do separate licensing, separate registration. So um, I know that is hard sometimes, trying to figure out also who to talk to and where to go to get those answers.
And please, it is, and it's confusing. It can be very confusing. So, if anybody ever has a question, you're welcome to reach out to me and I can point you in a direction, or you can reach out to any one of these presenters. They're all so helpful. And they all
There,
still do take my emails.
there's a question, sorry, in the Q&A
Yeah.
about, did you say pet food treats are not
Yes.
required to be made in an inspected kitchen? No, they're not required to be. We have the option to inspect under our law, but we don't necessarily inspect prior to licensing and registering your product. It does not fall under the cottage law though. So there's no exception for that. So you would still need to fill out the license and the registration form, send those completed labels and the fees to our office for review. Is the registration just for the analysis, or is that for license? That is, the registration is required if you're selling these individually packaged products. So if you have an 8-ounce package of Caroline's Cat Crunchies, then that would need to be registered. If you're selling what we call wholesale, then that product wouldn't be registered, but it would be where the tonnage comes in. So just reach out to us. We're happy to, I know that can be a little confusing. Come to us and we can try to make that a little more clear if that didn't answer it. Is there a difference between laws for pet food feed and pet treats? No, all of it falls under the commercial animal feed law.
Let's see. We had somebody that said, so if here's on the answers to one of the questions that y'all answered, they said, so if there was published research out there about a specific ingredient, quote unquote, freshing breath, for example, that could be accepted as substantiation as long as the study was scientifically sound.
That would just need to be included with your packet. And Jennifer Clifford also is the one who actually reviews all these labels and packets, and she would be able to reach out, I guess, if it wasn't meet that substantiation. But I think as long as there is a published research out there, then that might meet that substantiation. It's one of those little things that it has to be reviewed to determine if that would meet that. Laura, you can always reach out to us individually, to myself or Jennifer, and we can answer that question too. Oh, she did say Jennifer did answer that. Okay. Independent research is not always accepted. So it depends on that research project.
And then we have one last question that's been dropped in the Q&A for you from Ariella. Is using artificial food coloring, if using artificial food coloring, can we use different colors without affecting our analysis?
I believe so. I'm not aware, but that would need to be listed in the ingredients. So that would be an ingredient that's included on your ingredient statement.
Carolyn, thank you so much for being with us regarding um, all the information around pet food and pet treats at a farmer's market. So appreciate you and all that you do. Hunter, you are up. We are now going to hear from Hunter Moyer with the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services regarding dairy and dairy at farmers markets.
Okay, well, thank you, Kim, and especially Caroline for addressing one of the elephants in the room with the raw milk for pets. So don't have to cover that one later. But today I'm going to be talking to you about our dairy services program here in the state of Virginia. I'll be honest with you, dairy is pretty hyper-regulated. A lot of people don't understand what we do. There's not a lot of exemptions. So I don't have a whole lot to cover over requirements for farmers markets, but instead I'm going to walk you through kind of the dairy production and how it gets from the farm to the market, and then some of the things that we do in between to make sure that the products are safe and in compliance. So with that being said, first off, I want to give credit to our team of inspectors. Some of them are incredible photographers, and every last picture you see in this presentation is taken on a farm in Virginia of Virginia produced products or of our field inspectors performing their duties. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just jump right in with this picture from Tazewell County. So who are we? Well, I'm the program supervisor and I oversee the program as a whole. I act as a liaison between outside agencies such as the Virginia Department of Health and the FDA, as well as industry organizations. I work to update rules and regulations. I explain interpretations and tend to administrative tasks such as our program's budget. Our assistant program supervisor is my right-hand man. He oversees inspector activities both remotely and in the field, assists with rules interpretation, and takes the lead on label reviews. We have a program support tech who is essentially the backbone of our program. Her primary function is data entry, permit issuance, and ensuring that sample results, as well as any enforcement notifications, are mailed in a timely fashion to producers and manufacturers. And finally, and last but certainly not least, we have a team of dairy inspectors who are the eyes and ears for the industry within the Commonwealth. They complete inspections, perform sample collections, and ultimately they're the ones that enforce the dairy laws and regulations to maintain compliance and ensure safe and wholesome dairy products for all consumers. This is a map and where each of our inspectors has their respective territories. You'll notice some of the territories are quite large with the exception of one. We have one inspector that only covers half of one county. And that is because out of all the dairy products that we regulate and oversee, the vast majority of them are farms, and over half of our grade A farms are located right outside of Harrisonburg. So this map will also show you the regional animal health labs where our samples are taken and run by regulatory personnel, and also our Richmond office for a point of reference. So just some real quick dairy facts that are Virginia specific from last year. You'll see that Virginia produced 170 million gallons of milk. The top 3 milk producing counties were Rockingham, Pittsylvania, and Augusta counties. A dairy cow costs about $1,700 each, and Virginia has an average herd size of about 186 cows, with a total of about 68,000 in the state, each of which is producing about 8 gallons of milk on a daily basis. Give you a few more seconds if you would like to read the rest of it. All right, so by far the biggest part of our program is inspection and sampling. When issues arise with inspections and sampling, such as repeat physical violations or repeated violative product samples, we do have to enforce the rules and regulations we have in place to provide safe and wholesome products for our consumers. So to help mitigate these enforcement penalties, we provide equipment and label reviews, as well as things like consultations. Now, consultations will include all things dairy related, from what type of bedding to use for your animals, to what type of steel should be used for your pipeline systems, and the specifications of how the welding should be performed. We help determine what the best type of chemicals to use for cleaning and sanitizing your facility are. We also help troubleshoot quality problems in raw milk or finished products. Part of our mission really is to promote and foster the dairy industry in whatever we do, and to educate about the industry everywhere we go. You'll see this is one of our dairy inspectors who is teaching children about some of the milk and water sampling that we do. Like I kind of said in the very beginning, dairy is extremely, like we say in the industry, hyper-regulated. It is one of probably the most regulated food in the nation. And the reason being is everyone here has heard that milk is one of nature's most perfect foods. And it really, really, really is. It's extremely nutritional for humans. And unfortunately, the other side of that is also for bacteria such as Listeria and Salmonella. So Virginia has 5 dairy-related regulations, and that includes the grade A regulations. cooling, storing, sampling, and transporting of milk regulations, regulations for ice cream and frozen dessert manufacturing, regulations for pay-purpose laboratories, and finally the regulations for milk for manufacturing purposes. And that regulation includes all of our standards for cheese and butter making. Both our grade A regulations and the cooling and storing regs have incorporated the pasteurized milk ordinance into them, as we refer to it as the PMO. So the PMO is a set of minimum standards and requirements that are established by the Food and Drug Administration for regulating the production, processing, and packaging of grade A milk. The PMO lays out what to look for in inspections and how often to do them, how to test and verify pasteurization equipment, and establishes raw and finished product sampling frequencies and minimum quality standards. Believe it or not, many of these standards that we use in dairy, especially when it comes to equipment design and cleanability, are also the same standards that many pharmaceutical drug manufacturing companies use to comply with their regulations. All right, so the first step on our journey today is going to be where it all starts, which is at the farm. Currently, Virginia has 334 grade A farms, to include 27 robotic milking facilities and 19 manufactured grade farms. Grade A farm is your typical dairy that produces milk that's going to be pasteurized and bottled. Our manufactured grade dairies are going to be most of our producer processors, where the milk is collected and made into cheese or ice cream right there at the farm itself. Additionally, grade A raw milk can be transported across state lines regardless of its final use, whereas manufactured grade raw milk may only cross state lines if it's going to be used in manufactured grade dairy products. On our farms, we sample their water supply every 2 years to check for the presence of E. coli and coliform. And 4 times out of every 6-month period, we're going to sample that milk for somatic cell counts and standard plate counts, as well as for antibiotic residues. Somatic cells are nothing more than white blood cells. They give us an understanding of the general health of the herd or the animal. A standard plate count is a way of counting the amount of bacteria found in the sample, most often an indicator of how well the milking system is being cleaned. So most states simply follow the federal PMO standards for somatic cells and standard plate count, but Virginia's standards are actually much stricter than the federal limits. Therefore, we make some of the highest quality grade A milk in the nation. Our somatic cell limit is 250,000 less than the federal standard, and our bacteria count is half of that. So for our milk samples, we have a 3-strike system for enforcement. If 2 of your last 4 samples are volatile, we issue a letter of warning. If 3 of the last 5 are over the limit, your permit is then suspended, and you cannot sell any more milk until your counts are back within the legal standard. If your milk tests positive for antibiotics, however, there is no such thing as a warning. Your permit is immediately suspended, and you can't sell any more milk until your supply is tested negative again. We test for radiological compounds for farms within a certain radius around nuclear power plants. We can test for aflatoxins in both feed and milk, and we also screen for brucellosis and tuberculosis if needed. Each farm is inspected a minimum of twice a year. Most of the time, we're actually out there every quarter. During each inspection, there's 83 different things we look for on each one. Inspections include the construction and cleanliness of the milking parlor, the milking equipment in the milk house. We observe the cleanliness of the animals themselves and their housing environment. We make sure that hand washing and toilet facilities are in working order. Make sure to check that there's no harborages for rodents or flies. And also we want to make sure that the milk is protected from contamination and adulteration. On a physical level, we're making sure that like hay and sawdust isn't found in the milk. On a biological level, we're making sure that filters are in place to catch mastitis and any other debris that may come off the animal during the milking process. And on a chemical level, we're making sure that there's physical break in the chemical connection lines that are needed for cleaning while milking is in progress. Now, our primary purpose is, of course, to ensure the safety and wholesomeness of all milk and dairy products sold or offered for sale for human consumption. Sometimes we do have to take enforcement on serious violations. Obviously, on the left-hand side, all that white stuff going down the drain is a bunch of money. This producer had to dump milk for failing multiple quality tests. And on the right-hand side, those cheese blocks were not adequately pasteurized, so they ended up being rerouted for hog feed. Antibiotics is a huge deal, so I'm going to step up on the soapbox here for a minute. Cows and other dairy animals are given antibiotics for the same reason people are, such as to help fight off an infection. We don't want any type of antibiotics in our food supply because of the potential of causing harm to those individuals that are allergic to certain antibiotics. So milk has been officially screened for antibiotics for decades now. Each year, the amount of milk that tests positive for antibiotics declines. As of last year's study, only 0.006% of the total raw milk supply in the nation was found to contain antibiotic residues. Now, none of that milk ever enters the human food supply. As a matter of fact, it's mandatory that all milk has to be tested prior to pasteurization, most of the time prior to even being offloaded from the truck. And any milk testing positive for residues has to be disposed of in a manner so that it will not come back into the human food supply. Not to mention, the farmer who's then implicated for that adulteration has to pay all the other farmers for their contribution of the tanker load of milk, which can be between 5 and 8,000 gallons. As I said earlier, it's a huge deal in what we do, has been for a very long time. We actually stumbled upon this old inspection report a while back. You'll notice a few things I'm going to point out. First off, that producer was suspended the day after his sample was taken from the inspector because it was adulterated with antibiotics. Now we have technology that can detect residues within 15 minutes or less. Some of that can be utilized on the farm as well. But a 24-hour turnaround back in 1974 was incredible. Note the time the inspector went out to serve the suspension, which was 9:30 at night. So we do continue to take these very seriously. You'll also see that the farmer had to dump about 300 gallons worth of milk that was produced in between the initial sample and the negative follow-up. So since there is no warning or anything with this, it's an immediate suspension. The cows don't stop making milk. So all the milk that was produced within that time frame was made without a permit and therefore unsaleable. So the producer would have to continue to lose milk until his sample came back as negative for antibiotic residues. This is just an example of a conventional milking parlor for a cow. This is what we call a double 8 parlor. So you can milk 8 cows on either side at any given time. This is an older style stanchion barn. This is the type of milking facility where cows would walk in, they would get fed while they're being milked. And this is a newer style rotary or carousel system. Think of it like a giant merry-go-round. The girls walk up to the platform voluntarily. They get on it, they take a spin. As they're riding around in this big giant circle, their udders are getting prepped, the milking units are getting attached. She lets her milk down. Automatic takeoff sensors know when the milk is quit being let down. They come off automatically with no human intervention. She's given a post-dip treatment, and she's allowed to exit on her own when she completes that circle. So how does the milk get off the farm? Well, with the exception of producer processors, most milk in Virginia is sold through a milk marketing cooperative. This is in order to achieve the best price for the producer. The co-op decides which plant to send the milk to, who's going to get it, and that way the farmer can just focus on himself and his farm, or herself and her farm. So before the milk leaves the farm, a sample has to be taken from each bulk milk tank. The sample will be used to check the quality and temperature of the milk and to make sure there's no antibiotic residues once it arrives at the plant. These haulers are evaluated on their pickup and sampling procedures to make sure they don't contaminate the milk. Part of their evaluation includes ensuring proper hand washing, proper sampling technique, proper sanitizing of any dippers or other pieces of equipment used, proper labeling and storage of the sample itself during transport. So since milk is such a perfect food for any organism, the milk in these tanks has to be agitated consistently and refrigerated immediately to prevent any unwanted bacterial growth. Milk tanks are equipped with multiple ways of assuring that the milk is rapidly cooled from the 100 degrees that it leaves the animal from to less than 40 degrees within an hour or so, and then held there until it's picked up. Currently, we license a little bit over 260 of these milk hauler samplers. They're evaluated every year and a half. Each time we do an evaluation, there's 50 different things that they're getting evaluated on. Proper regulatory training is crucial because these hauler samplers directly affect how much the producer gets paid for their milk. So if you look at the two pictures, that tank on the bottom right might be, let's say, 4,000 gallons. Well, the hauler sampler is responsible for getting a representative sample of that milk into a 4-ounce vial. So there's things he has to do, like proper agitating, taking the dipper down to certain levels, making sure that it's sanitized and things like that, because the farmer is going to get paid off of that sample. So since the producer is responsible for maintaining the milk below 40 degrees at the farm, we've also got to make sure that it stays that cold all the way to the plant. After that hauler is done sampling, the milk is pumped in specially designed tankers that are built to keep milk cold for prolonged periods of time while in transit. So, of course, those tankers also get inspected by us. We look for proper tamper-proof seals. That way we know that the milk is protected from not only contamination, but also intentional adulteration. We check for properly filled out shipping manifests and sample vials. We look at the interior and exterior condition of the tank, check out any hoses, filters, gaskets, etc. Make sure that all those pieces of equipment are clean and properly protected from contamination as well. We have a fleet of about 180 milk tankers right now in the state. They are inspected on an annual basis. And we also have 4 wash stations. Milk tankers have to get cleaned in a very specific way. Most tankers get cleaned at the receiving grade A plant, but these wash stations are standalone facilities that can actually, they're permitted to do the specialized milk tanker wash. And we inspect them as well. So if you see a big stainless steel tanker rolling down the road next to you and it's got one of these green stickers on the back, that means more than likely it's got milk in it. Once the milk is delivered to the plant, where it's going to be pasteurized, it undergoes another series of quality checks before it can be offloaded. First off, it's illegal for a plant to accept a load of milk if it is over 45 degrees or that it's tested positive for antibiotics. Additionally, the plant can reject loads based on their own quality standards, such as butterfat content or cryoscope results. Cryoscope is a test that looks for added water in milk. Way back when payments were based on weight, some unscrupulous farmers would add water to their milk, but this test will determine how much the water content is. And for those who didn't know, milk is actually 87% water to begin with. In Virginia, there's about 16 grade A processing plants. They're inspected on a quarterly basis. Their pasteurization equipment is also checked by regulatory personnel on a quarterly basis. Their water systems are getting sampled every 6 months, and finished products are getting sampled at, you'll notice the 4 out of 6 frequency here with all of our products. So 4 times out of any 6-month period, they'll be sampled for coliform and bacteria, looking again for antibiotic residues. And these finished product samples are also going to be checked for phosphatase. Phosphatase is an enzyme that is naturally occurring in milk that will be deactivated upon proper pasteurization. Now, Virginia is kind of unique in the nation. In 48 of the 50 states, all the milk safety programs reside in one agency. But in Virginia and Massachusetts, it's actually split between the Department of Ag and the Department of Health. So the Department of Health actually oversees grade A milk processing plants, along with grade A products, finished products. So here's some pictures of our team doing some pasteurizer checks at a cheese making facility that is utilizing HTST technology. You can see we have to verify proper time and temperatures are being met. We're cross-referencing plant thermometers with regulatory thermometers. That middle picture is part of a test called the salt test, which measures the time that milk is kept at a certain temperature while it is flowing through pipelines to ensure that it's still been properly pasteurized. So now that we've talked about fluid milk, let's see what else we can do with our milk. So after it's pasteurized, it can be turned into all types of fun stuff, one of which being ice cream. Dairy Services inspects 2 different types of ice cream and frozen dessert facilities. We inspect the manufacturing plants where the mix is actually made and pasteurized. And then we inspect those facilities that purchase a pre-made mix, add their own inclusions and flavorings, and then wholesale that product. VDEX Food Safety will inspect facilities that sells their ice cream products at retail. Some of the things we look at during inspections are equipment and facility construction and cleanliness, washing and sanitation procedures, proper labeling of products, pasteurization and storage records, and of course, employee hygiene. Just like with our grade A plants, they're getting inspected quarterly. If you're pasteurizing those, that equipment will get checked out quarterly. Finished products are sampled 4 times out of every 6 months. We're looking for coliform, we're looking for bacteria, phosphatase. We do have the ability to screen for pathogens. And one of the interesting things about ice cream and frozen desserts is ice cream has a federal standard of identity that says in order to be called ice cream, it must have 10% milk fats. So we will run that fats and solids on frozen dessert products. And if your fats are above 10%, you can call it ice cream. If they are not above 10%, you have to call it a frozen dessert. Also, the way our laws are written, we also do non-dairy frozen desserts. So you think like popsicles. If you're wholesaling popsicles, that would most likely fall to Dairy Services, even if there's no dairy in it. So next up, we've got our cheese and butter manufacturers. Their inspection and sampling frequency is pretty much the same as all the other plants. Once again, we're looking at equipment and facility maintenance and construction, hygienic equipment design, proper washing and sanitation procedures, proper labeling of products, and pasteurization chart reviews. As with all of our manufacturers, we also always want to try to assist them as much as we can with food safety plans and things like that. Cheese plants, butter plants, so we've got about the same number of cheese and butter as we do ice cream in the state. Same inspection frequency, same sampling frequency. But what's different about cheese and butter is we will always run pathogen testing on cheese and butter. So that includes screening for Salmonella, Campylobacter, E. coli, O157, and Listeria. So cheeses can be made basically one of 2 ways. They can be made from pasteurized milk, or they can be made from properly aged raw milk, which is above 35 degrees for a minimum of 60 days, or the minimum number of days specified in that standard of identity for that cheese. If you are making a cheese that has a standard of identity, it has to follow that standard of identity. For instance, mozzarella, that standard of identity specifies that the milk has to come from cows or water buffalo only. If it comes from milk of another species, like goat, sheep, or whatever, you cannot call it mozzarella. You can call it a mozzarella style goat cheese or something. You can call it goatzarella. You can make up a name, but you just can't call it mozzarella. The same also goes for certain aging requirements for other standardized cheeses. Gorgonzola cheese, the standard of identity specifies it has to age for 90 days. Well, that doesn't mean you can't start it out as Gorgonzola cheese and only age it 60 days, but you can't call it Gorgonzola at that point. So you'd also have to think of a name or call it a Gorgonzola style cheese. In Virginia, we offer small scale exemptions, which a lot of states don't offer. And in order to qualify as a small scale cheese plant, your facility has to be small enough that it can't process more than 50 gallons of milk at a time. Or there's a couple other options, like maybe you are only doing raw milk aged cheeses. But if you fall under that exemption, you're exempt from certain regulations. And this was put in place in hopes to bring more small artisanal cheesemakers on board. Some of these exemptions include the requirement for antibiotic residue testing, dressing room and locker facilities, hard paved driveways, a fully equipped laboratory, separate rooms for different operations such as culturing, cutting, and wrapping, and the requirement that hoops and presses may only be made from stainless steel. So, for example, we would allow more economically feasible food grade plastics to be used by a small scale producer than we would a large scale producer. And the reason we exempt the requirement for antibiotic testing in milk used in cheeses is that cheese won't set if there's antibiotics in the milk. So if the antibiotics are there, they will kill or prevent the growth of the bacteria that you need to actually make the cheese product. So you essentially won't be able to do anything with it anyways. This is actually a picture from a very early construction phase of an Amish cheese plant. This plant is now fully operational, and there's about 2 or 3 times the amount of equipment in that room. And I just want to say, cheese making truly is an art. We appreciate our cheesemakers very much. We know it can be very difficult and time consuming, and you need a lot of milk to get a little bit of cheese. Moving on, I'm going to touch a bit more on some of the other things that our program does that is kind of outside the scope of inspections and sampling. The picture in the middle is a 50 cal plus rotary parlor that was recently installed in Northern Virginia. And the picture on the right is a Cool-Feed popsicle machine. So each one of those holes freezes 1 popsicle, if that gives you any idea of the scale of what we're looking at here. No matter what any of this is, there's a lot of pipeline, a lot of stainless steel, a lot of rubber, and a lot of plastic. All of those have very specific requirements that must be met, which most often requires a lot of physical inspections throughout the duration of the construction project. So for something like these, we're checking to see if we have sanitary welds that are fully penetrated and properly polished. We look at proper velocity and slugging of the CIP system, what components of your facility are CIP-able, and what must be taken out, manually disassembled and cleaned out of place. What are your metals made of? Do they have a 32 micro-inch surface roughness average? Looking at vacuum pressure, what's that looking like on your milk lines? Centrifugal and positive displacement pumps, are any of those seals leaking or anything like that? If you have heat exchangers, we got to look at each plate to make sure there's no fouling. Everything in your facility has to be sloped to drain. And even robotic milking facilities, they've got to follow the correct automatic teat preparation protocol for the United States and not Europe. And that differs by each particular manufacturer. I realize pretty much everything I just said probably doesn't make any sense, and that is absolutely fine. This is why we really want to work hand in hand with our producers and manufacturers, and this is why we do consultations. There's a multitude of rules and regulations concerning dairy, and we're talking thousands of pages of regulations and standards and interpretations and specifications. And really, honestly and truly, the last thing we want to see happen is for someone to spend tens of thousands of dollars worth of money on equipment just for us to deny it because it's made of an unacceptable grade of stainless steel, or it's got poor welds, or something as simple as a threaded bolt within a product zone. So we really do try very hard to get out in front of these things before anybody spends money. Once again, for label review, we want to make sure that the net weight statement is properly written and spaced, Sean and I, most of the time verify the list of ingredients is in order of descending weight. We make sure the name of the product is accurately described within the correct font and type size parameters, double checking about allergens, making sure they're listed properly. And we also look at some of the more obscure stuff in the NLEA, such as intervening material between the ingredient list and the manufacturer distributor info. As I said previously, we really do try hard to promote and foster the dairy industry everywhere we go and whatever we do. Oh, this is another inspector teaching to a class again. And we do try really hard to help out our producers and manufacturers. On the right-hand side, you'll see Petri film plates of samples of ice cream, and all these have high bacteria counts. So each one of those little dots is a bacteria colony forming unit. We were assisting the manufacturer to find out where in the process their problem might lie. Now that we're at a farmer's market, we have to make sure that we're permitted by the correct agency, and that all depends on the type of product that you're selling. If it's a product that is registered by the VDH, then that would be like fluid milk, yogurt, kefir, cottage cheese, buttermilk, or whey. Manufacturer grade products would be regulated by the Dairy Services Program. Those would be cheese, ice cream, dairy and non-dairy frozen desserts, cream cheese, and butter. To sell at a farmer's market, it's really quite simple. All dairy products have to be permitted by either us or the VDH, or if you reside in another state, it still has to be permitted by that state's regulatory authority. That permit must be in good standing. You can't have any active recalls for products being sold at the market. And any new products, especially new types of cheeses, have to be sampled and then held from sale until those results are received back as negative for pathogenic growth and within other safe regulatory levels. Almost all dairy products are considered TCS food, so they have to be held at refrigeration below 41 degrees. If you're going to take them out, they have to be marked when they're taken out of refrigeration and then either sold, served, or destroyed within 4 hours. Same goes for free samples. All right, what products can't you sell? The sale of unpasteurized milk for human consumption is prohibited in Virginia. A recent CDC study concluded that the consumption of raw milk is at least 150 times more likely to make a person ill when compared to the consumption of pasteurized milk. Raw unpasteurized milk, just like raw chicken or raw meat, has certain inherent risks no matter how well it is handled until it reaches a kill step, such as pasteurization. Milk has been regulated for more than a century nationwide because of those inherent risks and food safety concerns. And in older states like Virginia, laws concerning the handling of raw milk and the pasteurization of that milk have been around even longer. You also cannot sell any dairy products that are made without a permit. That's across the board. So you have to have a permit to sell dairy products, and to have a permit, your facility must be inspected and your products must be sampled. If you are a farmer's market manager and have a vendor who wants to come in and you are unsure of their permit status, please just reach out to me at dairyservices@bdax.virginia.gov. I've got that email open at all points in time. We've only got like 80 different firms between ice cream, butter, and cheese. We know which ones are permitted, which ones aren't. And if your vendor is from another state, the dairy community as a whole has always been very tight knit. It's no different for regulatory personnel. Just let me know who the vendor is and where they originate from. I'll reach out to that state and then make sure that they're good to go with that state with those products and from where they come from. This shot was taken in Abingdon. I just want to always tell people to thank a farmer. Doesn't matter what kind, they're all very, very important. And with that, I'll take any questions leave these pictures up from Smith County.
Thank you, Hunter. I appreciate it. I love the overview as well as all of the great pictures and then the specifics regarding the markets. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. Could you discuss herd shares and if they can be sold at a farmer's market?
Yeah, so herd shares, they're not expressly prohibited and they're also not expressly allowed. So the point of a herd share is to have a contractual agreement proving that you have some ownership of an animal or the animal's products or something like that. But that contract has to prove bona fide true ownership of the animal that will withstand the court of law, or else it could very well be interpreted as the sale of raw milk for human consumption. On that point, we also consider donations as an acceptance of good or services in exchange for unpasteurized milk. So if you are going the herd share route and are trying to give out samples, we really encourage you to have a person sign a contract first. That way all parties are protected. And then if they don't want to pursue the herd share agreement, they can rip it up. But yeah, that's still very much open to interpretation, the whole herd share idea.
I appreciate that. But just to reiterate, no raw milk for human consumption can
No
be
raw milk for human consumption,
sold at
absolutely
a farmer's
correct.
market. Yes. I'm sure you are asked as many times as I am that question, and why not? Let's see. We also had a question. Are the milk samples taken announced or unannounced?
Milk samples can be taken at any point in time. For our permitted entities, sometimes we will literally grab them off of a milk tank truck so they can be completely unannounced. With our small facilities, we need to make sure they have milk, so we will coordinate with those permit holders to make sure that they have something we can sample.
Okay. Um, Somebody's making ice cream on site at a farmer's market. Um, do they go through you and food safety or just you?
If they're selling point of sale retail at the farmer's market, it would be outside of dairy services scope. They would go to food or the health department, whatever is applicable to them.
Okay. It's
But if they are making their own mix from home and wholesaling or pasteurizing any part of that mix, they would need to talk to us.
okay. And then homemade butters and infused butters. They go through, so regular butter that goes through you. Do infused butters go through you, or does that also go through food safety?
That's kind of going to depend on the scope of how it's being made and how it's being sold. If it's just store-bought butter and you are just adding some ingredients, and then taking it to a retail, selling it at a retail location such as a farmer's market, most likely it would be food. If you are taking milk and separating out the curds and whey and then doing some other stuff to it, then it may very well come to us.
Okay. Hunter, would you put the slide up that has your email address on it again, the dairy service email address? Perfect. And let's see, do we have any other questions? So again, I guess the same answer that you just gave me. If I'm taking milk and I'm making taking the curds out, making mozzarella, anything that I'm doing to manipulate it to make it cheese, etc., that comes to you.
Most likely, yes.
Okay. But if I'm taking a regular product like butter and I'm infusing it or something, that probably would fall under food safety.
And again, it does depend on to, are you doing it retail? Are you doing it wholesale? Things like that. We
Okay.
don't, go ahead and be upfront, like all of our permits and everything are free. There's no cost to be permitted or anything like that. But we do have some hard stops when it comes to home-based operations.
Yeah.
We're not prohibiting anybody from operating out of their house, but that part of the operation is probably most likely going to be a walkout basement or something completely separated from the rest of the house.
Okay. All right. And so that would that fall under inspection?
Yes.
Okay. And so we also have a question here. Are there any labeling rules for raw milk sold not for human consumption pets? Caroline, if you wouldn't mind answering that question. If anybody has any additional questions for Hunter, please drop them in the chat. And as always, so appreciate you coming and sharing all of the beautiful things that are being done. Did you say that you have under 500 dairy farms in Virginia now?
Yeah, we're rocking around the 340 mark. Yes, ma'am.
So we've gone from 66,000 to 500. As somebody that grew up on a dairy farm, that breaks my heart. Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We are getting ready to hear from Dr. Miller, Susan Miller, with Virginia Department of Agriculture Consumer Services. She's going to talk about meat and poultry regulations. And so we already have a question in the chat for you. So look forward to hearing your presentation.
So yes, I'm Dr. Susan Miller. I'm the Supervisory Public Health Veterinarian with VDAC's Office of Meat and Poultry Inspection. So today I'm going to give a brief overview of the requirements for selling meat and poultry products in Virginia. There are certain meat and poultry products that must be inspected to be offered for wholesale or used at the production of retail products or by restaurants in Virginia. Products that are required to be inspected are those from amenable species. The amenable species include cattle, swine, sheep, goats, and poultry. Amenable poultry are further characterized as chickens, turkeys, duck, geese, guineas, and squab, as well as ratites, which are ostrich, emu, and rays. In addition, if the product contains 3% raw or 2% cooked meat or poultry and offered for wholesale, it must be inspected as well. There are two types of inspection, state and federal. Products inspected by VDAC's Office of Meat and Poultry Services are state inspected and may only be sold within Virginia. Products inspected by USDA FSIS, federally inspected, may be sold across state lines or nationally. Some meat may be sold without inspection. Non-amenable species do not require inspection and include bison, farm-raised deer, rabbit, and even things like llamas and alpacas. Though they do not require inspection to be sold, they may need to be inspected to be purchased or be used. For example, restaurants, retail stores that want to further process, or farmers markets requirements, which we'll discuss in a little bit, may require that even though it's not our requirement that you sell it, it may be a requirement that it be inspected to be sold at those locations. Inspected meat that is further processed in a retail store or restaurant does not need inspection. However, this is still regulated by agencies or regulatory authorities like VDAC's Office of Dairy and Foods and Health Department. And finally, meat and poultry products sold directly to the retail consumer do not require inspection, but meat used in these products must be from an inspected source. So an example of that might be like a retail butcher shop. So you might get your cut of meat, it won't be inspected, or there won't be an inspector on facility all the time, on premises all the time at that facility, but they started with an inspected product that was indeed done under inspection by USDA or VDACs. The retail shops like that, they are also regulated, obviously, by other agencies. Though farmers market sales are directly to retail consumers, there are obviously other stipulations with farmers markets for inspection. So can poultry be sold without inspection? There are indeed exemptions that allow poultry products to be sold without being inspected. Exemption means exempt from a bird-by-bird inspection in the presence of an inspector on premises all the time. However, it does not mean exemption from all aspects of the Poultry Act. There are still requirements that must be met with exemptions. There are 6 of them. The bird must be healthy when slaughtered. The slaughter and processing are conducted under sanitary standards, practices, and procedures that produce poultry products that are sound, clean, and fit for human food, and obviously not adulterated. The poultry is labeled correctly and identified as an exempt product on the label, and the label must include the processor's name, address, exemption statement, and safe handling instructions. The business or person can only operate under one exemption per calendar year. So there are multiple exemptions based on the number of birds you produce, whether it be 1,000 or 20,000, and based on the type of operation you have, whether you're going to produce cut up birds, whole birds, further processed products. So you can only operate under one of those exemptions or one of those types of exemptions per calendar year. Obviously, the product cannot bear the official USDA markup inspection because it is not fully inspected. And poultry products under these exemptions cannot move into interstate commerce, which means they can't cross state lines, so can only be sold within Virginia. These exemptions require an application for permit and an initial facility visit, as well as the permit must be renewed annually, and there will be annual inspections as well. The exemptions are classified based on volume, also ownership of the bird, process, and again, the intended use. Each exemption is very detailed and each has stipulations and limitations. So if you're interested in these types of exemptions, you'll need to reach out to the number on the slide, again, as we can provide you the document that explains all of those exemptions and each of their stipulations. So who can sell meat and poultry to restaurants or to retail stores? As mentioned previously, though some meat doesn't have an inspection requirement to be sold, the purchaser has an inspection requirement to buy or use it, and this includes restaurant and retail stores. So basically, we have our regulations that sometimes intersect or often do intersect with Health Department and Office of Dairy and Food regulations. So this is where maybe our regulations allow the sale of it, but their regulations don't allow certain sales. So anyone who has had their product processed at a USDA, VDAC's OMPS inspected facility may sell to a restaurant or retail store. Restaurants and retail sales also have requirements for the use of non-amenable species like bison and rabbits, and poultry produced under one of the exemptions. So you should check with the locality and appropriate regulatory authority, whether the health department or Office of Dairy and Foods, for specifics on the sale of non-amenable species or poultry exempt products at or to these facilities. So again, you'll just have to reach out to those regulatory authorities to find out what product can be used, whether it has to be inspected, whether it can be used from one of the exempt processes, etc. So what are the requirements for selling meat and poultry at farmers markets? To sell meat and poultry at a farmer's market, you should first check with the individual market for their requirements. Each might be different, and those requirements obviously are set out for Virginia, and you would want to check with those first. Meat and poultry that has been state or federally inspected or under a poultry exemption may sell at a farmer's market. A meat handler's permit, however, may be required. This permit requires inspection of your facility and handling practices for sanitation, as well as some additional record keeping requirements. And I believe too, this is an annual permit. Meat and poultry products sold directly to retail customers under the regulation of Office of Dairy and Foods and Virginia Department of Health may also be sold at farmers markets. And farmers markets obviously are subject to Virginia Food and Drink Law and related regulations. So how can you tell if your product has been inspected? The product will bear a label, and there are many label requirements, but for an inspected product, the label must bear a legend. So there are a couple examples here on this slide of legends. The red meat will have the circular legend on its label, and that's the top left. Poultry that has been inspected will have a legend on the label shown at the top right. You can see that prior to the establishment number, there's a P for poultry. Product produced under our state inspection program, VDAC state inspection program, will have the lower legend, which is an oval, and you can see it has Virginia listed in there. And again, those products can only be sold within the state of Virginia. They cannot cross state lines. Do you have to have inspection to sell rabbit meat? So this is a little bit of a different type of meat sales, and so though and it's a yes and no answer. Though there are no inspection requirements to sell rabbit meat, there obviously again may be a requirement that's inspected for its use. So for instance, restaurants, retail stores, and farmers markets may require that the rabbit be inspected. There are two types of inspection for rabbits. The first is voluntary inspection, and that's provided by USDA FSIS if you want to distribute rabbit across state line, or VDAC's Office of Meat and Poultry Services if you want to distribute within Virginia. This is an inspection of the facility and every carcass at slaughter, and it requires an on-site inspector for the entire process. Voluntary inspection has an hourly fee associated with the service. For the second item, Virginia is a little bit unique in that Office of Dairy and Foods, Office of Meat and Poultry Services, and Department of Health developed a special rabbit inspection program that is unique to Virginia that allows for the sale of rabbit meat to Virginia restaurants, retailers, and farmers markets. So it doesn't require carcass by carcass inspection or the presence of an inspector at the facility at all times. It is similar to the poultry exemptions in that there are requirements for facility inspection, sanitation, and labeling. The program, again, is conducted in accordance with Virginia food laws. It requires an application with a permit and annual renewal fee. This program, though, is not necessarily honored by other states. So if you plan to sell your rabbit meat to restaurants outside of Virginia, the restaurant will need to check with that state's regulatory authority on whether the use of the meat from the Virginia rabbit program is acceptable. And again, our rabbit program is actually enforced through Office of Dairy and Foods. So on that slide, if you're interested in the rabbit program, you can contact ODF at that number there listed. So can you sell meat harvested from hunting? Meat harvested from wild game, birds, and animals, unfortunately, cannot be sold in Virginia and are used for food. Animals must be domestically raised for their meat for it to be sold. So if you had some fallow deer or farm-raised ducks or geese, you could indeed sell the meat. It could be done under inspection, or again, for the poultry part of it, there could be done under one of the exemptions. So that's a little short and sweet there. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much. We do have some questions. Let me see. First, we have a question regarding, is there any kind of a license that's needed to sell lamb?
So again, that would depend on what type of sale it is. If you're going to wholesale to a distributor who's going to resell it, then you would actually need inspection for that. If you're going to sell to the end consumer via a farmer's market, I'm pretty sure it also has to be inspected for that as well. If you have a retail store, you would have to start with lamb that had been inspected, whether it be a whole lamb carcass that was done under inspection, or you buy perhaps primals, subprimals, like a leg of lamb. You'd have to buy it from an inspected source, and then it could be sold retail sale to the end consumer without inspection. But that again would be done under Office of Dairy and Foods, and you would need a permit with them. So yes,
Okay.
you're going to need some sort of license or permit to sell meat.
Oh, okay, great. So this is regarding dried beef jerky, and this is regarding a farmer's market. So the vendor is buying it from a local farmer or meat supplier. Will the dried meat need to be inspected? So I'm assuming that he's buying meat from the farmer. If Mr. Duprez, if I'm not summarizing your question correctly, please let me know. But you're buying meat from a local farmer or meat supplier, and then you are drying it. Do you mean you're dehydrating it? And then if so, does that need to be inspected as the final product as beef jerky? Well, I guess if it has like sauces and stuff on it, it
Yeah.
falls under
So
food.
I mean, I can sort of answer that. So
Yeah.
if he wants to sell beef jerky, he would have to start with an inspected product. So if he's buying from a farmer, it would have to be a farmer who's had the meat done under inspection,
Right.
or local meat market. Obviously, that's the product he starts off with has to be inspected. Again, as long as he's not wholesaling the beef jerky and he's going to sell to a retail consumer.
Yeah.
But again, that would be done under Office of Dairy and Food. So
Okay.
so yeah, we work really closely with them, and depending on the sale of the product, again, if it's wholesale, if you're selling for resale, then it has to be done under meat inspection. However, if you're just going to do retail sales, you're going to start with inspected product that was done under meat inspection, and then you're going to continue the process under Office of Dairy and Foods, who's going to regulate that type of product.
Okay, I appreciate that. A couple of other questions. Thank you. We're getting a lot of activity here, so bear with me. Who does need a meat handler's permit?
I would ask you to reach out to our office for that, because there are exemptions from that as well, and I'm not really familiar with those. Again, our program analyst who usually gives this presentation, she probably would be able to answer that, and I apologize.
Okay.
So I would suggest you reach out to OMPS and ask that question, because again, there are exemptions from needing the meat handler's permit. So that's something that I think someone else can answer probably better. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So here, either the folks on this call are either farmers market managers or vendors at farmers markets for the most part. So as a market manager, what should the market manager be looking for from a vendor that wants to sell meat and poultry at a farmer's market? What kind of permits or license or exemption certificates, et cetera, what should they ask to see from that vendor for that vendor to be able to be eligible to sell their products at market?
So again, for raw meat sales, you would
Mhm.
expect to see an inspection legend on the product.
Okay.
For sales of further processed products, that would fall under the retail sales of Office of Dairy and Foods. And I know that their website does, or the VDAX website does have a link to all folks who have permits with ODF. So you can certainly ask to see their permit. That's something they may not carry with them, and I don't think they're required to have it displayed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think that Elaine answered the lard question. Rabbit, is there a requirement for the inspection of if sale levels are normal?
So no. So again, and I'm not sure. I know that each farmer's market, again, may have their own stipulations. So you'd have to, and that again, I'm a little unfamiliar with, is what the regulations are for the farmers markets themselves, whether each one is different or all throughout Virginia are the same. I guess if the farmers market has a stipulation that they only want inspected products sold at their farmers market, then they would need inspection for that rabbit. However, you can sell rabbit retail sales at normal sales to customers without inspection. So you would not need inspection to sell rabbit.
Rabbit. Okay. And we've been asked if you could please repeat. That is not what was asked. We were asked if you could repeat the information for duck meat, duck eggs, and duck fat being sold at a farmer's market. What are the requirements for selling duck meat, duck eggs, and duck fat at a farmer's market?
So duck eggs, I'm not sure. Duck fat and duck meat. Again, retail sales of those, if it starts with an inspected product, would be under Office of Dairy and Foods.
Okay.
I mean, it all depends on the source of the product. So if it starts out as inspected in retail sales, unless of course you have the poultry exemption, which you would have to have registered through us.
Right.
So yes. So if you don't have the poultry exemption, and you don't have start, you want to harvest your own birds and sell, you have to have the poultry exemption for that.
Okay. And I'm going to ask, I know Elaine is answering another question right now. I'm going to ask her to answer this question also regarding the duck eggs and duck fat, because I know duck eggs are sold at markets and they fall under the egg rules regarding labeling and keeping refrigerated and things of that sort. And duck lard, I know I've bought that. I just need her to answer that question. So Nina, we will have Elaine answer that for you. Regarding the rabbit, I appreciate your answer. We also had somebody drop in here to double check with your insurance carrier to make sure that you are covered to carry uninspected meat, because some insurance carriers will balk at that. And during the last presentation, somebody was asking for a list of insurance carriers. We do have a list of folks that carry insurance for vendors that sell at farmers markets. Campbell Risk Management is one of the larger ones in the country that specifically offers insurance for vendors, and their information is on our website. We also had a request from somebody with VDH for a list, but it looks like Elaine must have answered it. If our meat vendor uses a USDA inspected facility, do they need anything else to sell at a farmer's market?
Okay, so I'm assuming when they mean they're using a USDA facility, that the product they're selling was produced at the facility. So again, I need to make sure that they're not using meat purchased from a USDA facility and then further processing it to something else before they sell it. If it comes directly from the USDA facility, still in the package with the USDA and legend on it, then there may be a requirement for a meat handler's permit. That would be the only requirement. And again, you would need to check with our office for that.
Okay.
But
And that's what we generally see, yes.
Yes.
Is that it's coming out of a USDA and that it's coming from a processing facility with the USDA label on it. And historically, a meat handler's permit has been required. So if Christina, if you meant something else, please let me know. And keep in mind, I always keep this in the back of my mind. Anytime you manipulate the original product, it generally falls under inspection. It generally under some department's inspection. I will pose a question because it came up last year, and I will pose it because it's often brought up. So we have so in this example, we have a poultry vendor that's exempt, that falls under the poultry exemption. And they are selling bone broth made from the poultry. They're exempt poultry. Does that need to be inspected? Or does that fall under their exemption?
So I do not believe that falls under the exemption. Again, that I may have to defer on that question, because the poultry exemption process, I'm a little unfamiliar with, but I'm fairly certain that the exempted products only involve raw poultry, carcasses, and cut up. I don't think it involves further processed like broth.
That was what we received last year. So just making sure that hadn't changed.
It is not.
And when you're talking about the poultry exemption, just to clarify again what you've just said, that includes your poultry meat, but it also includes if you want to use your bones for stock, your chicken feet for stock for human consumption, that falls under the poultry exemption.
So those products do.
Do those products fall under? Okay. So here's my question. I'm sorry. So here's my question. I was thinking out loud. So a poultry farmer that falls under the exemption is selling raw meat. So that falls under the exemption.
Yeah.
They also are selling bones to make stock, and they're also selling chicken feet to make stock.
Yes, that does fall. Those products fall under the exemption.
So then if that exempt poultry farmer is selling those chicken feet for pet food, that falls under the pet food department, and it does have to be packaged and labeled as pet food.
Correct.
Pet treats, etc.
Yeah. If it's sold for human food and sold under our exemption, again, there are specific labeling requirements for that as well, which we discussed, briefly.
Yeah.
I should have put an example of the label in there, but the label will tell you obviously whether it's been done under exemption. And again, if it's pet food, it should be labeled as pet food.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then if you're using lamb's milk or goat milk to make soap, that does not fall under your department.
No.
Okay.
Ours is only meat.
Okay. Does that fall under you, Hunter, or does that fall under food safety? Who does that fall under? We'll get that answer and we'll drop it in the Q&A. Nina, I see you raised your hand. In the same example of a market vendor selling chicken and bones, can they also sell stock they make from their own chickens? But it's not exempt.
It would not be exempt. And again, that's something, if you're going to make stock from those products and sell them retail, that would be Office of Dairy and Foods regulations. So the retail sales come under them. So you would have to check with their regulations to see if they allow the production of chicken stock for retail sale out of poultry that falls under Virginia's exemption, or do they require it to be inspected poultry, fully inspected poultry?
And that, if it has not changed, that was answered in the Q&A last year with the regulations posted to it on our website. So we can make sure that that is attached to the information we send out. We ended up going up to the federal government to get answers, I believe, because we all were trying to figure out that specific answer as to who actually oversees the bone broth from an exempt poultry farmer. Does it need inspection or not? The answer ended up being, yeah, if you're putting stuff in it, if it's straight broth, probably not. Yeah. Okay, so to further clarify the question regarding selling frozen USDA labeled meat, if it has not been changed in any way, do they need a meat handler's permit?
Again, that's one of those areas I'm not familiar with, and I apologize.
Okay. So you'll
that's under our compliance department, and again, if you call our office there, our admin will give you Tom Hall's number, and he can answer those questions a little.
And we've got the omps@vdax.virginia.gov email address here, and you can send that to Tom, that question, right? And so if you're if you're not doing anything to the meat, do you need a meat handler's permit? And then the other question would be, let's say we're adding bacon to the hamburger or cheese or something of that sort, then so we've changed the product. What do we need to do? So that would be the question for omps@vdax.virginia.gov. Sorry.
And I can sort of answer the second one. If you're going to change the identity of it by adding anything to it, if you're going to unpackage the product that has our inspected label on it, and you're going to add anything to it, that type of stuff can be done if the sale is a retail sale. You're not wholesaling, but again, it's done under Office of Dairy and Foods and their retail laws for their retail establishments. That would be the same thing, kind of what a butcher shop does. I mean, we don't Office of Meat and Poultry Services doesn't inspect every small butcher shop. They buy an inspected product, and then at the counter, they make it into, steaks, roasts, further processed products. And that's all done under the Office of Dairy and Foods, because those types of small mom and pops are only selling to the end consumer. They're not selling to restaurants. They're not selling to, Kroger's or food lines for resale. So
Right.
again, if you're going to change the identity of something that's inspected, add to it, or break it down even further, and you're going to do it simply for a retail sale, you will need a retail permit for that through Office of Dairy and Foods.
Well, thank you for your first time with us. I so appreciate
And
it.
again, I apologize. I couldn't answer all your questions.
No, that's okay. I appreciate it. I'm very grateful that you were in town. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And all of the speakers that were here today, it was very informative. I have one question in here that I will answer. Lena, yes, I will make sure that in the email that goes out with all of the link will also be there to the resource document from last year that has the answer regarding the chicken stock question. However, if you need it now versus waiting the 2 weeks for us to gather all of the documents and presentations and send everything out, it is on our website. So if you go to the VAFMA website and you look and you type in the search bar food safety, or you look under programs to food safety, then you just go to the Q&A document. I believe it's over 50 pages. It's broken down very simply by categories, and you can find those answers there. To my knowledge, that has not changed since last year, that information. But that information is on our website. It's under vafma.org. You go to food safety and you look for the Q&A document from last year, and you will be able to get that information. Let's see. The last question that was posed, to clarify, even as a farm or anyone really, pet shoes need to go through what department? One or two departments? Okay, so it's not that they're canceling each other out per se. It's that, again, VDEX has multiple departments that oversee multiple products. So one product might be overseen by 2 or 3 different departments in the Department of Agriculture. And pet products falls under that category, as do a lot of other products that are out there. So for example, if you're doing pet shoes, then that falls under pet, the under Caroline's department that oversees pet services. Caroline's typing an answer, thank you. But it also falls under weights and measures. And so weights and measures has very specific requirements regarding how pet shoes and pet products are weighed, packaged, and labeled. So so you need to look at multiple departments in getting your information. And yes, it is confusing. That's why we're trying to create some clarity with the summit. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to the different presenters or to myself. And I'm happy to let you know where your product actually falls within the hierarchy of the different agencies so that you can get all of the information you need to be successful. Regarding the question regarding labeling, so your pet products do, under weights and measures, they do require a label under weights and measures because you're selling it by weight. And so it does, and the specific label is under weights and measures. If you look at, and we have it on our website also as to what that label needs to look like. So a meat handler's permit is a gray zone area. Maybe it should be included in the next food safety training course. Thank you for that feedback. We will see if we can get some information on that. I appreciate, Frock, you. You certainly are more of an expert than I am on the meat handling permit based on what you do and your products that you sell. So we will see if we can get some more information for you and hopefully provide that tomorrow or certainly by the follow-up email that goes out. So with all that being said and done, we are actually done for today, unless anybody has any additional questions. We do have a food safety manual, Chrissy, that it is the first ever Virginia farmers market food safety manual that's very specific to all of the different types of products and who does what department you need to go to, what the rules and regs are. It has been approved by the different departments, and we are finalizing it literally over the next 2 days as we speak, and that will go out in 2 weeks as an attachment. So there is a list of all of the different departments and where the products fall under. So it hopefully will be easier for you to be able to maneuver through the system. At least you know which department to go to get an answer. And again, we're happy to be a resource for anything that we can. America, thank you for your plug for your market. She's looking for vendors at the Latino Farmers Market. So anybody that's looking for vendors, you're welcome to send that information to us at VAFMA, and we're happy to put that out in our information, and or you can reach out to America if you are in Richmond and want to sell at the Latino Farmers Market. We will put it out in our newsletter or social media, etc. If you're looking for a vendor or your vendor looking for a market, let us know. We always love that. Regarding the next and final day of the Food Safety Summit, tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp, woo. I hope that the platform is not updated again tomorrow. Maybe I won't be quite as scattered. We have for the first time presenting nursery services. And so under the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, David will be talking about what is required if you are selling plants at a farmer's market, pollinators, plants, etc. And so we will get the inside scoop there. We also have the Virginia Department of Fire Programs. Troy Bauer is fire marshal, and he will be here talking about what you need to know regarding the fire regs as it applies to farmers markets. So every market manager really needs to be there, as well as vendors need to know what are your requirements regarding fireproof tents, the amount of space you need to have from other tents. If you're cooking, do you need to have a fire extinguisher by law, etc. So please hang with us and attend. Again, we're doing nursery services, the fire marshal. If you are doing boozy food products, you're doing kombucha, you're doing vanilla, you're doing tinctures, anything that has alcohol in it, we will, or you want to sell wine or do wine tastings at a farmer's market. We also will have Mark Hallman back with us again with the Virginia Alcohol Beverage Control, talking about boozy bundt cakes and selling booze at the farmers markets, and then all the products that we don't really know have alcohol in them but do, and what you need to do to be able to sell those. In addition, last but certainly not least, we will have Lester Schomburger and Melissa Wright with the Cooperative Extension, and they will be sharing with us all of the awesome programs that they do at the Extension, all of the training classes that they have for vendors and market managers, and the multitude of tools and resources they have available. So one more day. Hang with us, please. The information is tremendous. I know it's overwhelming. We do this in order to help you be better at what you do. You are making amazing products, you're selling amazing products, and we want you to be compliant with the law. And so that's the purpose of this, is to give you the answers straight from the individuals that are overseeing those regulations and enforcing those regulations. Okay, so with that being said, we did have one more question that was dropped into this. Are vendors that don't make their own product allowed to sell at farmers markets? So to answer that question, each market has its own rule. The state of Virginia does not have a regulation regarding a market being a producer and maker only market. And so you would have to look at, though most states do, Virginia does not. And so you have to look at who that market manager, what that market is, and what their rules and regulations are. Most markets do have producer only rules. They have rules regarding the amount of mileage that products come from, etc. But it really is just based on that market. And for example, we have 1/3 of our 350 some farmers markets are in food deserts. And so we do have markets like the Lynchburg City Market, which is a great market in downtown Lynchburg, that because they are in a food desert, they do have products that are not grown locally, but they have our very transparent system of letting you know that the avocados and the lemons and limes came from XYZ farm. They're doing it in order to provide food that's not locally grown in Virginia to the community, but they are transparent about it. So again, those regs really, just depend on the rules of each of the markets. But a lot of times when you see products that, you think may not be grown in Virginia, it might be because that market's in a food desert and they're trying to get food to the community. And hopefully they're transparent about that. I appreciate all of you for all of your comments. And if I've missed anything, please let me know. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. So with that, I will say thank you and we will end the training. Thank you all so much. Thank you to all of my presenters. Really appreciate you.